It's Wednesday morning, more or less 10, which means it's time for relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons. Today is Submarine Wednesday, or in military speak, Subwed. And I am going to be continuing work on the 1960s vintage Renoir cutaway nuclear launching submarine, the George Washington. There's not too many pieces you're going to be seeing today. There is this deck. Okay. This deck is the deck through which, and all these missile tubes. You're going to be seeing a lot of these missile tubes today. Going to be, kind of not very exciting. These missile tubes, there's 3 decks associated with this. There's one at the bottom, where the missile tubes glue in at the bottom, or in real life they just set there. Then they come up through these holes here, okay, into another deck above this, which are the hatches on the top. And eventually these will be primed and painted, and hopefully we'll go through these holes without without scraping all the paint off. This deck presents several problems. One is it's warped, and so whenever I have a chance, I kind of bend it the other way, hoping to get the warp out of it. But the painting of it is difficult. Actually, I'll get the other. There's 2 little pieces with a pipe that connects them here. And apparently what happens is that there's like a compressor and then a storage tank and a big control unit that pumps compressed air through these pipes to all of the missile tubes. And the missiles are launched using compressed air, just like torpedoes are launched out of torpedo tubes. So the submarine is like 60 feet underwater. I'm not sure exactly, but, something like that. It's not down very far, but it is completely submerged, and then the compressed air pushes the missile up out of the tube. This tube, there's a little missile that goes in here, up to the surface where the rocket ignites, the rocket engine ignites and sends it on its way to destroy hundreds of thousands of people, because that's what we do with nuclear weapons. Anyway, what I've got here is this deck that's warped, but also painting these pipes has been a challenge. So I painted them all the machinery pipe color, and then got some little tape, tiny little bits of very narrow masking tape, and attempted to tape over them, squeeze the tape down and all, and then paint it up to them. But as you can see, it was a failure. In some places the tape too far, and the gray paint didn't go far enough. In other places, the gray paint leaked through the tape. So they're just really kind of a mess. So I need to try to do it freehand. So I'll probably start with the bone white, and just catch these places on here and here and here, here where the gray paint got up onto the kind of beige color that is the pipe color. And then I will get out the gray paint and attempt to paint up to, but not over, the pipes, so that there's a nice clean line between the floor and the pipe, just like it would be if there were pipes laying on the floor. I will do some flips for who, yes. Finally, so these are the only parts you're going to really be seeing today. If you maybe later on, I'll bring out the whole thing and just show everybody what's going on and what the progress has been so far and what will be happening next. But this is the main painting thing today, is to get these pipes working. Pipes aren't going to work. Okay, that isn't what I'm going to do. The pipes aren't working. There aren't even real pipes. They're just little raised surfaces on a piece of plastic. So, but get the get the impression of pipes laying on the floor by painting accurately. The other thing I'll be doing, and this will be most of the stream today, is there are 16 missile tubes on the submarine. There are 15 in this box. There are 15 regular ones, and then there's one that is actually spring-loaded with a little lever on the bottom that will shoot a little missile, about that big, plastic missile-shaped piece of plastic, up through the tube, up through the top of the submarine. And when I built one of these way back when these kits were in their original shape, I mean, when they originally came out, yeah, it actually did shoot up. It went about like 4 inches above the top of the submarine. So, but that tube isn't, I haven't put that tube together yet. The problem with these is that the parts are not really very well made, okay? And the missile tubes are in 2 halves that were cemented together, but there are then seams that show on the sides, okay? And the real missile tubes didn't have seams like that. And what I'll be doing is very gently filing these seams down so that they are not there, and then sanding it with really fine sandpaper to give it a smooth finish again. This one's not too bad. And I'll be doing that on 15 of these. These are really tight. I don't know how in the world I'm going to have to make these holes bigger. Otherwise, when it comes time, once these are painted, and the paint adds, I mean, not very much, but it adds some additional to the surface. And if these holes are this tight, with it being unpainted, it's just going to scrape all the paint off. And especially tight right at the top of the tubes. It's weird. It's like the diameter of the tube on the top, because then it gets really loose back here, you know? There's lots of clearance, so it's like the tops of the tubes. The diameter is a little bigger than the rest of it. Okay, since this is relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons, and we'll see how relaxing this is, I'll be starting with the painting part. Okay, trying to get this fixed again, so that, you know, there's like 5% of all the pipes on here painted well. And then there's a little touch up, you know, around here and here. You can see where the gray paint isn't quite covering, and all. When I get the gray out, I'll touch those up as well. Let's see. No, I'm going to delay. I'm not getting to painting yet. I think I set a record. Was it like last Friday or on Monday or something? I got started with only 10 minutes into it. But I need to do a flip. So I can flip this thing, because there isn't anything much here to break. So here. Three blanks. Do 6 flips. There, finally, we got a C. 2 to 4. Oh, just so you know that I actually do painting on this. This is what I did on Monday. Shiny, kind of, yeah, pretty ostentatious night thing. A minifig for, it'll probably show up as some sort of boss. It'll probably show up as some sort of boss thing in some sort of boss fight in our Dungeons and Dragons campaign. Looks like the kind of figure who would, you know, the kind of figure who would come out and say, "None shall pass," you know, where it's really hard to take it seriously, because look, really, how can you take that really very seriously? But they take themselves seriously. They got a blue sword here. Maybe that's got like cold magic on it or something. That would be interesting. There are swords with like that, where there are spells you can put on swords. Anyway, I did this guy just to show you that that painting does happen on Monday. And now it's finished. I can take it off the stand, maybe without breaking it. There we go. And set it over with a whole pile of other stuff that's just piled up, because this entire work surface is nothing but stuff piled up. Okay, how far? Only 11 minutes in. No, that's pretty soon. Usually, I can use up like a half hour before I actually start painting. Isn't that right? But I guess today, okay, well, we'll start painting. I'm going to finish just all these spots here where the gray went up too far onto the beige color. I'm going to paint those back the beige color and make some effort. I'm going to make an effort to not paint down onto the gray, so that, like, for this 1/4 of an inch here, perhaps I can have a nice line. There's another 1/4 of an inch. That's good there. Yeah, I'm going to celebrate the fact that there are cumulative, maybe out of all of this, cumulatively, there might be like a full inch of pipeline that doesn't need huge painting fixes. So let's give this a stir. Use up another minute. This is another way to use up a minute. So I'm going to get this color on, then it needs to dry before I start working with the gray. And then probably have to do a more touch up with this color after the gray dries. There'll be quite a build up here. Hopefully I can keep the build up of paint to a minimum. When this is put into the submarine, I'll be looking at it from this side. So I'm not going to be worried about the back very much. This side, you won't be able to see that. So I'm only going to be working on this side of them. Yeah, so for the most part, just half of the things. Yes, I'm going to use my head magnifier and this little bitty brush and see how this goes. So I'm always making promises on the stream, like, the latest promise has been going on kind of, it's almost like a running joke now. I really need to clean up this work surface. You should always keep your work surface neat and clean. Well, what has happened is something like 80% of all of the paints that we have, instead of putting them away in these wonderful custom-made paint holders that Alexis made, they come out, get used, and they just sit on the work surface and never get put away. And now they are all like covering 2 square feet of the work surface, just everywhere. Yeah. Fortunately, I'm just doing small things today, so they're not in the way. But if I'm working on the hull of the submarine and I need a lot of room, it's really, really kind of a problem. Maybe later I'll just show you what a mess it is. Okay, this has this handy little light on it. And I'll put these on. Yeah, I can focus this morning. Yeah, kind of. This looks really... Okay, well, this will be a chore today. Yeah. Didn't need much more than that. Get out the teeny little brush and begin. What is it, like quarter after? Huh. Yeah, it's not quite a record. It's not quite setting a record yet, or starting to paint. Pretty close though. I think the record is 10 after. But typically, I'm able to fill the time between the start of the stream and the start of doing anything like a half hour. And I probably could have today. You know, I could have talked about what Dice and Dungeons is really about and how you should catch our stream of our D&D campaign. Should just go silent while attempting to paint a clean line here. The thing is, when I look at it from this side, it looks like I'm right at the edge where it needs to be, but then I look this way and it's down in the gray. I think what I might go for is to have the gray go very, very slightly up against the beige color. I don't want the beige down on the gray. I mean, I'm trying to think this through a little bit. These are pipes. They're round, right? They're round, and so it would make sense that a little bit of the floor would show at the bottom of the pipe, kind of like it does here. Maybe right here is half an inch. Maybe this half an inch is how I want it to look, so that there's a little bit of gray. The gray line is just touching the bottom of that, like that, so that it looks like a round pipe with a little bit of the floor showing at the bottom of the curve. But you know, the pipes don't flow over onto the floor like that. That never happens. That half inch right there is how I want all of it to look. Something to aim for. That's pretty good. Of all of this length, all three pipes, I've got a half an inch that's okay. Did this in 7th grade or whenever I did it originally, because I built one of these shortly after they were actually produced. Okay. I didn't do all this kind of painting. The mistletoes are definitely yellow, so I painted those yellow, right? detail stuff of this equipment and things. The submarine kit went together really quite quickly because I wasn't painting the detail or fixing all the parts so that they fit correctly, or sanded down the missile tubes so that the seams didn't show. So when there's this like protuberance kind of thing, sure, there's a piece of dust that got caught in the paint. Yeah, so when I did this the first time, none of this kind of painting happened. Which means it was actually possible to build the kit in a reasonable time, unlike what's been happening here, where the kit is being built in an unreasonable amount of time. But there's a lot of detail in it. And, if things are going okay, I might just pull it out and show you what's been done so far and the kind of stuff that I've been able to do. I do need to remind everybody who's either watching or listening that I am not a master model maker, nor a very good painter. Seeing is just the best I can do, given the skill level that I have. It looks like there's another ½ inch here that's not too bad, right up in front. So cumulatively, I might have 2 inches. 2 inches of all of this that are not awful. It's pretty good. Better than nothing. It's better than no inches. What's that in centimeters? I can't remember. Probably like 2¼ centimeters or something. For those who honor a metric system as opposed to the throwback system that we use here in the States. Back in the 70s, I think it was, there was a "we are going metric" thing. There was some sort of political decision made that the U.S. should join the rest of the world and go metric. So there were all sorts of TV ads and commercial, things on. Even TV shows talking about the metric system. They started teaching it in the school. I think it lasted 6 months or so before everybody said, "Nah, we're not doing that." But there really was an effort to go metric in the U.S., and it was a total failure. Abandoned. Who have ever watched our politics here, you wouldn't find that very surprising. Things related to that. There was actually a space mission. I'm trying to remember. Was it a satellite or a lander? I think it was a lander. I forget the details. What I do remember about it, though, is that get to hear a vague memory, but it was a weird thing where either the It was a failure to convert from the imperial kind of measurement system to a metric. Distance was being measured, whatever it was. The spacecraft thought it was using one unit of measurement, and the instructions are coming in at the other unit of measurement. And, well, needless to say, that didn't work out very well. There wasn't an automatic conversion program going on the spacecraft. It crashed. I guess the moral of that story is it doesn't really much matter which unit of measurement you're using, but you should be consistent. Anyway, yes, the U.S. actually had a going metric effort that didn't last very long and ended up just being canceled. I think most people who lived through that period of time probably don't even remember that it happened. It was so unsuccessful. That's what I was talking about. What I have here is like an inch of there, but there. There's like about an inch total of this whole thing that is done right. So if I get this painted okay, then I'm going to be working on the missile tubes, and eventually I'll need to come back to this and clean the paint out of these. I think if I get all the paint out of these holes, that the missile tubes will slide through a little bit better. I need to let this dry a bit, and then I'll be painting gray 1 millimeter at a time. And then somehow still need to get the warp out of this. Still not sure how I'm going to do that. You would think that this deck would be pretty straightforward. It's just tubes and a couple of decks in this compartment. But, since I'm trying to paint the details, this has been a challenge, these pipes. There's another really challenging thing. I'm not sure how I'm going to do it at all, and that is the deck that has the tops of the hatches, the top hatches of the missile tubes, and those are just, maybe I'll just show it to you while this paint is drying. I'll be right back. Take these off in the meantime. I have to wait for that beige paint to dry a little bit, at least, before I start trying to paint gray. I always like just wandering off camera. Yeah, so there's this piece here. So the tubes come up through this deck. There's a deck below. There's a 3-deck system. This one of these tubes on the top. There's 3 decks involved with these missile tubes. One is the bottom one where these set. Okay. Then they come up through here. And then they end up here. Those are the hatches. 2 sets of hatches, actually. Okay. There's this one that's inside the hull, and then there's a hatch on the very top of the hull that opens up as well. And so the missile tubes are yellow, and theoretically, at least, that's the theory is that these hatches are supposed to be painted yellow as well. Well, they're just barely raised surfaces, and if I'm having trouble getting these pipes to be like a straight line, right? You can imagine what it would be like trying to paint each of these circular hatches yellow. And I really don't know how to do that. There's quite a non-zero probability that I'll just not even try. So one possibility is that I'm not going to try to paint these things yellow. They'll just be the hatch tops. That's the way it's going to be. Another thing I might try is if I can make a mask with holes that are exactly that size, kind of like that, but you can see that this is a little too big. But holes that are a little smaller than that. If I could get a mask, then I can mask this and spray paint it, and then at least the round parts would be yellow. And I think that might be enough. I'm not sure that the hinge part needs to be yellow. Anyway, yeah, that's a thing. So supposedly this is like one of the easiest sections because there's not that much detail on it. There's just some of these little machines like this in the pipes. But the reality is that because the missile tubes have, like, if I catch the light just right, you can really, the seams are obvious. Sides of the missile tubes. Sometimes in some of these, and the parts just never all fit together very well, there's actual little gaps that need to be filled in. But you'll have the pleasure of seeing each one of those because, I need to file them and sand them down. And that will make a mess. There'll be little plastic filings all over the place, which is why I want to get the painting done, because those little plastic filings get on these other parts and then you can't get it off. And they get under the paint and it makes just a huge mess. Okay, well, guess I can't put it off forever. Well, I could, but I won't. I'm going to make an attempt. You can see it here. This is the half inch here, and half inch here. I'm going to try to make all of these lines look like that. You can all start laughing now. This is the color neutral gray. This here. All right. So start putting paint on and see how this goes. Start with some of the paint in the cap. I like to not waste it. The solvent tends to evaporate quickly. Becomes unusable. Becomes so viscous it becomes unusable. Too bad. I've added another 1/2 inch to the, it looks adequate. Part of the thing with this teeny little brush and his little dollops of paint, it's that the stuff dries quickly. It builds up on the brush and stuff. So I'm going to have to periodically clean. Thing is that it peels itself away. It starts to dry on the surface. And if I go back and paint over it, it'll peel off the paint. It's almost quite dry. Okay. Perfect, but it's a whole lot better. So I think this will eventually just as soon get it done as well as possible the first time. I really don't feel like going back with the beige paint and touching up in the other direction. See, the paint in the cap is already getting to be too thick to use. All right, so if we look at it, I mean, it looks a little ragged because the paint is just drying, but that's not too bad. Not too bad. So I think like it looks like about every inch and a half have to clean the brush. Getting it out of the jar is a little hard because dip the brush in way too far. Take it out of the jar and put it in the palette or something like that, then I have the same issue of the paint just dries too quickly and becomes unusable, and then it just ends up wasting a lot of paint. Paint on the brush there. I need to touch that up just a little bit. It just went up a little bit too high on the side of the pipe. Taking it out of the bottle cap, I could control the amount of paint pretty well, but here it's just a little bit harder. break. At least one of them. I can't tell. I don't know if you end up hearing that or not. There's a filter on the microphone that's supposed to take a lot of background noise and stuff out of, just basically cut it out. So I don't know if you ever end up hearing the dogs bark or not. There was one that was having a good time barking there. Here, I'm actually going to try to get this off. There's a lump there of dried paint or who knows what it was, just leftover tape or something. But the surface is so uneven there. Can't get the paint on right, and it just looks bad. So I'm just going to scrape that off there. And then it's painful. Let's make it look smoother. This is not like a razor's edge line, but from the model is put together, unless you like put on glasses like this with a 2x magnification. Okay, there's a couple of spots here where the paint just isn't, it came up a little high, or here where it's just uneven to begin with. So I might come back with the beige paint and make an effort to clean that up. It's perfect as I would like it to be. It is getting very close to adequate. I don't think sputtering. Really, the only way to make this work is to get kind of a drop of paint down on the surface and then push it up to where I want it. It's doing okay, but now all of a sudden, just beige paint buildup there. Yeah, I think I can, with the beige paint, I think I can probably fix most of that. building this model is it's a really cool model, but always have to keep remembering that the purpose of the real thing was to wreak unimaginable destruction upon an enemy, right? First missiles, there were 16 of them. And that's quite a lot. 16. They weren't intercontinental ballistic missiles. They were more like intermediate range. Okay, because they didn't have to be, because they weren't fired from one continent to another. They were fired from a submarine that was lurking, theoretically, technically, really close to the target area. So there's 16 of these things, and the original Polarises carried one warhead each of probably like half a megaton. I mean, you can do the arithmetic, but that is dropped on Japan, or if you watched Oppenheimer, the one that went off out there in the desert in New Mexico. 15 to 20 kilotons, and a kiloton is 1,000. It's 10 times less than a megaton. Half a megaton is 500 kilotons. $30 times more, roughly. 15 versus 450. Each one of these was like 30 times more powerful. Infinity sight bomb. Yep. And 16 of those, so you can imagine that could make quite a mess. The things that were targeted. But, that wasn't enough. You couldn't be satisfied with that. So the next generation of missiles were Poseidons. Yeah, this was making an effort to fix a problem and creates more of a problem. I do that fairly often. Poseidon's one thing. They fit inside the same tubes. They didn't have to do much retrofitting. That was intentional. They didn't want to redesign the entire submarine around the missile, so they designed the missile around what they'd already designed in the submarine. Poseidons carried multiple warheads. Three. That was a submarine could blow up 3 times as much stuff than it could before. Cool. Those were replaced by yet a more powerful missile, the Trident. And you'd think the Trident would carry 3 warheads because it's called Trident. But I think no idea really how many warheads. It's probably a classified thing, like how many warheads the Tridents carry. How many are real warheads, and some are like dummy warheads to do that. They'll put fake warheads on these missiles so that if there's an anti-missile missile, decoys, they'd attack the decoys instead of the real warheads. Anyway, yeah. So they just kept getting more and more powerful. And I'm sure there have been upgrades since then. This one, the George Washington, was the very, very first missile launching submarine. It's actually called a prototype, okay, which means that it was kind of like proof of concept. This instruction sheet that comes through this gives, just all sorts of little bits of touching up here and there with the beige paint. We'll see how that goes. It might be kind of that's how it is with this painting, for me at least, these tiny little detail things. Actually, I would think that my head actually does look bigger because it's so much closer to the camera. Yeah, there's always doing this kind of stuff for me, Probably someone who's a little more skilled, has a little steadier hand, %, done beautifully, but I'm getting it like 80% done, just sort of marginally. Telling myself that, it's getting better. It was just unacceptably messy before this. This effort to paint it is having, some success. Well, we should have done this to begin with, rather than trying to tape thing, but new. It didn't work. Okay. Too high there. Maybe this is too low. No, that's better. Anyway, yeah, I've talked about these missiles before. I know it's a repeat. That's what I'm working on, so there. Seems like the trickiest bits are right at the look at these tube holes. Something wrong about how this is going. I think there's a difference in the molding here. But the base seems to come down further there than it does here, and getting the line right is just proving to be more of a challenge. I think that's where I want it, right there. I could carry that all the way across. That would be wonderful. Too high. So this is just proving to be a little bit more challenging. I don't know being so quiet. It's just I'm trying to get this. It's like this really nice kind of raised edge on the pipe that should make this straightforward. But I'm having a problem just holding the brush steady as I go across these missile tube holes. The whole thing looks terrible now. I don't know what to do about it. Come back and just iterate, I guess, and hopefully not build up too much paint. I'll just keep at it. This one is like the front one. Yeah, it's right there. No, there isn't a really good flat surface to hold the paint to allow me to push it up to the pipe. Now this needs to be cleaned off. I can say is that it's better than it was before, but it is difficult. Oh my, that was a mess. Yeah, in an effort to get that bit there, the brush moved way up, and where there had been an okay line, there is now a not okay line. Actually, I probably shouldn't worry too much about how it looks directly behind the tube, because the tube's going to be there. And it's going to cover it up, isn't it? So I should really be focusing on the spaces between the tubes and not behind the tubes. It was a good duh. Really? Why didn't I remember? Why didn't I think of that before? I just kept plugging away at it and made a mess. Right, well, it's getting down to done pretty much all I can. Let the gray paint dry and beige paint out again, and try in the other direction. To look as okay as possible. So I would say it's, except for this middle one, which really was a challenge. I'm not sure why. It does look better than it did. If I'm extremely careful with the beige paint and it flows well, be able to salvage this whole thing, you never know. I said this before. One views this distance under dim light, and it looks just great. That's going to be the secret: is if this thing ever gets done and it's displayed, just make sure that whoever's looking at it can't get too close, and that the light is kind of on the dim side. Let this dry a little bit. Then I'll come back. This front one is the most important. That's the one that shows right at the front, right? Because it's the front one. And then, they become increasingly difficult to see. The back one actually looks pretty decent, except for this one blot that I made. The middle, that's the biggest problem right now, and what I'll need to do is focus on the spaces between the tubes, reminding myself that those are the ones that are going to show, because the tubes will block the view of the things behind them. So like there and there and there, won't be able to see that at all. Okay, well, got better. It's not great. We'll let this paint dry, and then I'll come back to it. All right, since I've got this out, there's a buildup of paint around the rim. That's not a good thing because it keeps it from sealing very well. And when that happens, then paint will thicken and become difficult to use. So I'm gonna try to use this. Be able to see there's a lot of paint on there. See? And most of that is because the paint gets into the rim, the jar cap there, and just builds up on the rim here. In the paint, paper towel. There. Sometimes it builds up in the threads around too. There's a little bit there, like here, that isn't so much a problem with the paint drying out, but it's a problem with the cap getting stuck. Okay, I want to set this aside, and I'll wait for that gray to dry a little bit before I start in on the beige again. See, if you look at it from a distance, it's not too bad. But there's just some unevenness. I think I'll be able to fix some of that with tiny, if the paint consistency is right. Excuse me, I'm going to get rid of this. If the paint consistency is right, it should be able to get it closer to acceptable. if I can get this done, what I might go ahead and do is glue in these cement in, actually these extra pieces. Okay, and this deck is going to show on the bottom, and as I have in some of the others, will likely try to fill in these slots. Okay, where the where they'll show through on the bottom when you look at it. If you get down and look up, you'll see that there's that roughness. After those are cemented in, I'll fill those in with a little bit of plastic putty, and then can sand them down, and then just paint the base that neutral gray color. You can still see that there's some shiny bits. That means the paint's still wet. Set that aside. Well, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just keep trying to bend it. Just keep trying to get the... I have 3 of these kits. You've heard that over and over if you watch Submarine Wednesday. In order to get enough parts to make one. Because these are actual 1960s kits. Okay, they're not repros. They're the ones that were made back then, and you know, the ones that are available are started, or parts are missing, or they're broken, or whatever. So I bought 3 kits, and I've needed all 3 from time to time. This deck was warped on all 3 of them. Okay, you can see it's kind of bent up here. Well, one of them, it was bent yet even more, really badly warped, and the other one looked straight. The third one looked straight, but then as I looked at it, it wasn't so much straight as that instead of one curve, it had 3 curves. It was wavy, and I decided that trying to get, you know, one curved warp out of the plastic would be a lot easier than trying to straighten out 3, even though they were smaller. When you looked at it from the side, it was definitely not straight. So I think this, you know, this bending but not breaking, at least I haven't popped it. That would be great, wouldn't it? Just bend it so much it just broke in half. That would be great fun. So yeah, if I can get the paint on these pipes looking okay, I might pull out those pieces and just cement them in so that this deck was completed, except for the bottom, where I'll fill it in and sand it and repaint it. And then I need to definitely work on those missile tubes. I don't want to work on them while I'm painting because, as I said, when I'm filing, it makes basically plastic dust, and it just goes everywhere. And if it gets on this surface, and I know this because I've done this, okay, I did one of those once when stuff was out here, and there's just little white plastic bits that are with static electricity stick to the surfaces, and they're really hard to get off, and sometimes they get painted over. So yeah, anyway, I don't know if this is getting better or not. I keep imagining that the warp is not as big as it was, but it seems to be. I think you can heat this a little bit, like with a hair dryer, not with a heat gun, but just with a hair dryer, and then will bend back. Or maybe what I'll need to do is just like take a missile tube and weigh down the ends and let it sit there for the better part of a month. Okay, these back. Get the beigey paint out again and try to do my best to, you know, at least the most obvious places without making it go back in the other direction, right? There's always that. You go back and forth, back and forth. Oh, just one more dot. No, too much. Okay, I'm going to do this. The consistency of the paint here is going to be important, so I'm not going to squeeze too much out. I'm just going to like take tiny little drops of it, and as the consistency starts becoming focus. LED light actually makes a big difference. Yeah, there we go. What I'm doing here is these little, see these little bits here? Make it look more even. And sometimes when it sticks up like that, it isn't so much getting it right down to where it needs to be, but just getting rid of the point of this spot. Here is that the paint is covering unevenly. Looks a little ragged. That went a little too far, so I'm going to have to come back with the gray paint and touch it up. I was hoping not to have to do that, but it's kind of inevitable. There, like that. Yeah, that this middle one is not really that bad. It's just a matter of getting like a consistently even line across the entire thing here. Kind of the brush slipped right there. What made a mess. Started to, I just... It'd be really easy because it's curved to get a really consistent line by running the brush sideways across it, but for some reason that's just not working. Come back to that with the gray paint. This one back here came out really pretty decent. To myself about whether it's adequate or not. Is it acceptable in the scheme of adequately modeling? Does it need further iteration of paint to look a little better? It will show a little bit, so I do need to fix this. The back won't be seen, but the side here will. I'm going to look at it from kind of the angle that one would look at it, keeping in mind that when the tubes are in place, parts of it will be invisible. Literally invisible, but not invisible. I guess that, is there a difference? So if something is obscured and cannot be seen because of something in front of it, is it invisible? Or does it have to be like there but totally transparent or something to count as invisible? I don't know. That's a question one can ask oneself. Ask yourself that. Something can't be seen because of something in front of it. Is it the same as can you use the word invisible to describe that? There we go. There's a thing du jour. Something to think about. This is getting closer and closer to being okay. Need to do little touches, tiny touches of gray yet. And then it's just going to be to the point where it's adequate. Okay. Let that dry for a little bit. Hi. Welcome. Welcome to Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons. You get to watch paint dry before I do some more touch-up with the other color. I'm going back and forth working on this submarine thing. But in the meantime, take these off and put my other glasses on and take a little bit of time to welcome you to Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons. Usually on Mondays and Fridays, I'm painting minifigures for our Dice and Dungeons and Dragons show, like this guy that I did on Monday. Okay. He came out looking okay. The instructions from our DM were to make it look fancy and shiny. So this will probably end up being like a minor boss fight. It's like none shall pass kind of guy. I've got a blue sword here. It's cold magic. It will freeze you if I hit you with it. We'll do 1d4 cold damage. I hope that's all. Maybe it'll be a d6. Ugh. Anyway, yeah, it'll probably do cold damage in addition to the slashing damage. Anyway, yeah, so I paint dungeon tiles and minifigs for our Dungeons and Dragons campaign. Like last week, I did all these imps. There's a big imp family. Probably be running into those on the show as well. But on Wednesday, I work on a 1960s vintage submarine kit, and I'm just painting some detail on it now. These are compressed air pipes that go to the missile launching silos. Yay. And it's just been really difficult getting those lines straight because, anyway, I don't see as well as I used to, and my hand isn't as steady as it used to be. And that's an excuse because I never really was a very good painter, but here it is. So that's why it's Dice and Dungeons. But, yeah, while I'm waiting for the beige to dry so I can get the gray paint out again and finish that up, let me take a moment to talk about Dice and Dungeons. We do a Dungeons and Dragons campaign that streams on live chat on 3 Sundays a month at 2 o'clock Eastern. And this stream started because we make our own dungeon tiles. We make pretty like that one below me there. Blood magic pool in a dungeon. We print dungeon tiles on the 3D printers that are behind me. They're stone. This is rough stone. And we make them painted wood. These are all hand painted. These have been painted on this stream in the past. Stucco walls. These turn out, I think they're really pretty. But the feature of all of these is that although these are printed as one solid piece, so they're very sturdy, underneath here are little ball magnets, and the ball magnets adhere to each other. So unlike some magnetized dungeon tiles that you have to use on a metal surface because they don't stick to each other, they stick to the surface, these stick to each other, and you can rearrange them very quickly in any kind of orientation, and they will hold together. Our dungeon tiles also have wonderful features like operating doors. Those are pin-hinged. And again, these are all printed here and hand-painted on the stream. And then we have sometimes very special tiles, like the fire sigil tile that goes into one of our dungeon sets. This is cut stone as opposed to the rough stone. Okay. The cut stone set, and this dungeon, and it might show up on the crawl underneath where I am. Yeah, there's a crawl that shows some of our dungeon sets. That's a throne room. You can see the throne up on the back there. That's uses these wooden tiles. It's a warehouse. Okay, that's pretty cool. See, there's windows too. That's a minifig, but yeah, this sigil, fire sigil, there's 3 of them in the set, and they surround a cauldron. And the cauldron has a little magnet in it, and there's a flame, a fire flame that has a little magnet in it. And when the DM says magic is cast and the flame comes on, you put the flame in there, and then you've got that happening. So these dungeon tiles give you the opportunity to have a very realistic set for your campaign. Anyway, I wanted to show those off because they are really cool. Same feature. They'll stick together like that. So on Mondays and Fridays, if there are dungeon tiles to paint, those get painted. If not, I do minifigs, like the ones I showed you a little bit earlier, and the ones that are showing on the scroll. But on Wednesday, there's Submarine Wednesday, where I work on this 1960s vintage Renwell submarine model, which is going okay. Looks like the beige paint is fairly dry. I'll get the gray out again, put the head magnifiers back in, and I really hope that this is the last time I need to touch up these pipes. There's just a few little spots that are not adequate. Not very many anymore. It's getting to the point where it's okay. And once I'm done with this, I am going to, there's 3 pieces that cement into this deck. I am going to actually cement those in, and then this deck will be complete. The rest of the stream today will not be painting. It will be relaxing, filing, and sanding, because this is the missile launching deck. And the missile tubes go in here. Explain that as I'm working on them. 2 halves come together, usually not very well. And so they require a fair amount of manipulation in order to make them look acceptable. In this case, I'm going to need all 15 of them at this point, be filing and sanding them smooth so that the seams don't show when they're painted. Really love to have like absolutely straight lines, but just do that as the paint builds up, as I iterate back and forth, it becomes ever yet a little more ragged. But this model will be viewed, at kind of a distance. these decks themselves slide into the hull of the submarine, and a lot of it actually gets covered. So I'm just looking at this and thinking this is really pretty close to, I probably can't do much better. Without the head magnifiers, this doesn't look too bad. Needs beige paint, but that's going to be hidden. It'll be hidden behind this bit. Okay. I'm gonna, at some point, I just need to remind myself, if I try, and I've done this over and over, you know, that one more spot, and then it just goes like I bumped the brush into something. It's an oh moment. Not needing any oh moments here. It looks a little bit scabby because until the paint dries, it looks lumpy and shiny. So some of the gray paint isn't dry yet. And it, as it dries, it levels itself pretty well. Yeah, there's some places where I'm really tempted to do tiny little touches up, but this is the do this, don't. Yeah, just don't, just leave it, okay? But there's one spot. No, just leave it. It's pretty good. It's way better than it was when I started earlier today. And though it's not perfect, as I frequently say, I am shooting for adequate, not perfect. Yeah, going to be taking a break soon, but what I am going to do before then, and then this will give it time to set, is going to, hold on. There are pieces that go in here. This is like a compressor unit that goes here. And these, you know, I was going to cement these in, but to be honest, the fit is so tight that would probably just be it would just make a mess. Fits in it all. Oh, yeah, I'm going to have to cement that. I'm going to cement it from the bottom. Okay, because I don't want the cement to get on the top and, you know, just mess things up. Sometimes these pieces do not want to fit because what happens is that paint builds up on them and then they don't go into their slots correctly, or I simply don't have it lined up right. Slot is actually too small for the part. Yeah. So, get this out. I'm not quite sure why this isn't fitting. It did before. Once upon a time. Yeah, the downside of doing all the painting on here as opposed to just gluing the plastic parts in is that sometimes the paint will build up in these little slots, like it's built up on the inside of these missile tube holders. And that's going to be an issue. But, yeah, I'm not quite sure why this one isn't fitting the way it should. It's as though it's twisted. And it's weird, like if this... Great, well, there we go. Just that little bit of whatever manipulation. But there's a little bit of paint buildup here that makes it just look... makes it look bad. Now I want it back out again, so that I can clear that off. And this goes here. Oh, that's where it is. Okay. I have to look at it from the right angle. Build-up is horizontal like that. The angle I was looking at. Okay. Now I need to go down to the bottom of the workbench and find the piece that I dropped. He was able to find it. There we go. You can see the slots. I'm going to put the cement down here, kind of gingerly. And then this pipe, somehow or other, needs to go in here, which it doesn't do. I'm going to cement these in and worry about the pipe later. If these are in place, then I can play with that pipe. And when I come back from break, I'll be able to, the cement will have been set enough I can fill these in. I'm going to fill these in with a little plastic putty. And thanks for the follow. I appreciate it. A little plastic putty and sand it down and then paint the bottom. So I've got this liquid cement here. I am not going to use this brush because it's way too big. I'm going to take one of these other brushes that are basically dead, okay, but are a little finer pointed. See, it's just got this huge brush, and that's just not good. This allows me to get little dabs of cement. This way, I don't want the cement, it's very, very liquid. I don't want it to float up and mess up the surface, the painted surface above it. Can't tell. You can't see if the cement is actually getting in there or not. It is because it's holding. Okay. Let's back up again before I spill it. That would be a thing. And then let's see what's going on with this. Too much paint in this. Tip of this. Cementing this into place. It's going to be tricky. I may end up having to paint over some cement spots after this is put in, assuming it goes in. This thing would be if this just fits so tightly that it didn't need to be cemented. It's fitting so tightly it doesn't fit. Okay, well, I should not mess with this right now. I really need to let the cement set. If it's going to set at all. Do this, but I am. Yeah, I need to let these set before I start messing with this, because otherwise I'm going to be like pushing them around and bumping them and things. But when I get back, two things. One is I'm going to try to get this pipe installed somehow. It will happen eventually by just, carving down these little bits here that are maybe where the paint is built up or the plastic was too big to begin with. I never really pre-fit this one, which means that I never really made sure that it fit before I painted it. And sometimes it doesn't take much, just that, just this tiny little layer of paint, fractions of a millimeter, is enough to keep it from fitting into where it needs to go. Sometimes these parts are, when they're molded so that they're way too small. That is to say, this not only would fit into the slot, it would just sort of rattle around in it. Sometimes they're just too big. It doesn't go in there at all. To paint and it down or file it or something so that it actually fits into that hole. Prepping it, but I'm not going to do anything more with it until after break, because I want the cement that's holding those two pieces to set well enough to be able to get these into their openings without breaking them off. So I'll be back after break, and if I knocked off a little too much paint, Then I'll do, after I put this into place, I'll touch it up with the beige paint again. So that it looks, you know, like there's a spot there that got nicked off maybe, or maybe never even really got painted. So I'll be doing a little touch up after this is put into place. So then after this is cemented in one way or the other, put some plastic filler. You're putting some plastic filler into these areas here, because when this is in place, you can see the bottom. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and put plastic filler in there, and then after that sets, which will not be this stream, after that sets though, I'll sand that smooth and then paint the bottom. It's like the bottom's not been painted. This should be, this is okay. This turned out okay. All right. I'm going to take a break, be back in about half an hour, give or take. Usually I end up taking longer than a half hour. I'm going to try to keep it shorter. I don't know if I'll succeed or not. We'll find out. And then wrap this up and then start smoothing out the seams. Got the seams on these tubes. The seams show like there's a gap here. Filing those and then sanding them on as many as I can get done today. I'm going to put this away. So yeah, just little bits of things yet to do on this deck. Yeah, good thing I'm touching up. There's a spot there that's, yeah, it's amazing. You can just always find something. Finish up this deck and then work on the missile tubes and continue the quest of getting the missile deck, the missile tube launch deck completed. So I'll be back around 12:30. Shock and awe. I am back from break on time. I'm not quite sure what to make of that. Managed to spend, you know, the better part of an hour and a half. Well, hi. Welcome and thanks for the follow. You came in during break, but now break has ended and I'm back to working on the submarine. Oh my. Which I thought was really almost done, and then I just see that, oh, that's going to be behind a missile tube that will be invisible. There was just a spot there that needed to be gray, but this missile tube comes up through there. When you look at it from the side, you can't see it. So I spent an hour and a half trying to get these lines of these, basically what they are in real life is that these carry compressed air into the missile tubes to launch them. And this machinery here is like a compressor that pumps air into a holding tank, and then there's a control unit that determines whether or not that air goes shooting out here, sending missiles off to their destructive target. And these two things just got cemented in before the break. And what I am needing to do now are two things to finish this up. One is to fill in these gaps underneath here so that I can smooth them out and paint the bottom. And I also need to get this, three things, among the many things. I need to get this pipe. That's what this is anyway, is a pipe. There, it goes in like that. I need to cement that in place. and then touch it up with the beige paint. All right. And that's how that works. Is get that cemented into place. Actually, I don't need to now. Actually, I'm just going to push that down. That's holding pretty well. And since this isn't under any tension or anything, because there's no cement that needs to set, I can just get the beige paint out and touch up the little spots there where contact is made. So I think this is a compressor that blows air into the storage tank, and this control mechanism here with the pipe that comes to and from it decides to send the compressed air to the missile tubes, which are controlled down below, and they send the missiles on the way. Yep, creating havoc and destruction. I am going to, I think I'll just do the painting first. Tiny little bits of paint. Just where the pipes join. I'm going to use a slightly larger brush than I usually use for this kind of thing. Paint fills in the little gap as well, so it looks seamless. Even better. And then, yeah. Deck will be completed on the top. Okay. And next time around, when I sand this smooth and paint the bottom, this deck will be done, except for getting out the warp. Constantly kind of bending this in an effort to get the warp. And if you wonder why am I using a warped part, just repeat what I've said before. This is an original 1960s kit. It's one of three. I bought 3 kits because these old ones are started, parts are missing, things are painted badly, and I've needed 3 kits in order to get enough parts to make one submarine. And this is the least bad of these decks. Okay, it's got this U-shaped warp in it. You can kind of see, you can see it rocks like that. Okay, which is going to be a problem in installation. But one of the other kits was even more warped, and the third kit at first looked straight, but it turned out that it had 3 warps. So instead of being U-shaped, it was like S-shaped. And I think, getting one of these out is possible. Getting 3 of them out wouldn't have been. This is okay. I mean, this turned out okay. It isn't perfect. The lines are a little ragged. If you look at them under magnification, they're very ragged. But the whole thing has reached the level of adequacy. Like, it is now adequate that I aim to achieve on this stream. I'm not a master model builder. I'm not a master skilled painter. I am an old guy working on an old submarine model. Okay, now this is going to look kind of pretty scabby. This is plastic putty, that is made to kind of match the consistency of the model, the polystyrene. Now I'm going to be squeezing it into these gaps, and I'm actually going to put more on than is necessary. It'll have to be sanded down, and the reason for that, I found, is that it does shrink a little bit as it cures. And then when I've sanded it down, I still ended up with a divot. And also sometimes it doesn't get all the way into these crevices. Anyway, yeah, there's got to be a better way of doing this, but I don't know what it is. So if you're doing this kind of thing, this don't take this as a how-to show. It's not. This is just how it's getting done now. And the reason I'm doing this is that once this fits into the hull of the submarine, you can actually see a little bit of the bottom. And then when you're viewing it, you're going to be viewing it like this. This is kind of the angle you're going to be seeing it in the submarine, but if you get down and look at underneath, you'll be able to see this. And so that's why I'm filling this in, just so that if you can see it, you might see some irregularities in the bottom of the deck, but you won't be seeing what is obviously the tabs from a model. Okay, well, the top is okay. The paint, there's still spots here where the gray paint hasn't completely dried yet, so there's a difference in reflectivity, gloss, but this part is done. And the next thing I need to do, and just keep repeating what I'm doing, because people kind of come and go, is these are the missile tubes that fit into these holes. There's 16 in the submarine. There are 15 in this little box because one of them has a spring in it that launches the model, a very poorly done model of a Polaris missile. So that one isn't done yet, and that'll be done later because I have to get the lever and the spring and everything in place. But these 15 are cemented together. The tubes have two halves. When they come together, if you can see it on camera, yeah, you can see the seam. Okay, the seam is there because the two halves don't align perfectly. Like what's happening is that this is raised on this side and this is raised on this side because the two halves of the tubes are just a little offset from each other once they're cemented, and it was next to impossible to get them perfectly smooth. But once these are painted glossy yellow, those seams will really show. So I'm taking each one of them and filing them down so that the seams are gone, and then using very fine emery cloth, which is here somewhere, polishing it, okay, so that the little file marks don't show. I'm going to take this and get it out of here because this process of filing and sanding generates a lot of very fine electrostatic plastic dust. And it just gets everywhere and sticks on everything. And so I'm going to get as much of this stuff out of the way as I can, including the brushes, because I don't need little plastic dust stuck in the bristles of the brushes I use. This is pretty impressive for me. I'm thinking ahead, kind of planning for whatever can happen. Except that the workbench is just hideously messy, and so I can't find a place to put anything. I haven't put anything away. I haven't cleaned up and put anything away for like 3 weeks now. so everything is everywhere all at once in real life. Yeah, so I'm gonna get rid of this. I'm going to put this aside, and then get some files and some emery cloth. Be right back and get working on those. The very fine, like 1600 grit or something. The cloth. No, the other thing I really should do this, and so I'm going to, is I'm going to put some paper towel down here so that as I generate plastic dust, it doesn't just pile up on my highly sophisticated piece of cardboard work surface. Go find paper towels. Be prepared. One might think that since I had a half-hour break, that I could have planned ahead and done some of this stuff during break. You would be right if you were to think that, but I didn't, because there you go. As you look at these, you might notice, I don't know if it shows up much on camera, I think it does, yeah, that there are different colors. Like these are darker than these, and there's a couple that are really light, like this one, and there's an intermediate color. That is because these missile tubes were really quite, in the kit, the primary kit I was working with, were very badly formed. There's dimples in them. Let me see if I can find one. But right on the side here, there's dimples, which means that the injection molding, when the plastic went in, what happened was that it just wasn't put in with enough pressure, and so it didn't fill the mold. And so I went to the other kits, and what happened is all the other kits were already glued together, and some of them were just really mangled. They had big gaps and everything. And like here, there's a gap. You can probably see it a little bit there. So even after I file these down and sand them, I'll probably have to be filling in some of these. Well, the moral of this story is that these missile tubes are a mess, and each one of them is going to require a good deal of sanding and filing and sanding before they're ready to use, and even then, some of them will require some filler, like in that gap here and this gap here. And I had to use some with, I selected the ones with the smallest gaps. These, for some reason, even though this is like step 6 out of 9 in terms of the construction of the submarine, the people who bought these kits decided, oh, let's just glue all the missile tubes together. Why not? Let's do that first. And they just made a hack of it. Really, it's just a mess. Well, anyway, yeah, here you can see the dimple. Yeah, that shows up even on camera, where this one is like the least bad. I picked the ones that were least bad, but whether intentional or not, that's going to have to be around to the back when these are installed in the submarine so that it doesn't show. Yeah, so what I discovered is that the design of this kit is sometimes ridiculously detailed, right? Seriously ridiculously detailed. Like there's a clock on the wall, and there's little raised surfaces for the hands and the numbers. Too small to really even think about painting, but there it is. You know, like rivets, little rivets along the side of the tubes here. But that the manufacture was very poorly done. There are some parts of this, like one of the control panels, for example, where you can start to see where I'm filing. This edge is raised up compared. This side is the light side of the seam, and the dark part is the other side, and I need to file this down. If I do a little bit of that, you can see the dark line right there. Tiny little dark line. That's the result of this being higher than that. Fraction of a millimeter higher. But enough so when it's painted glossy, they're glossy yellow. It's enough so that will be really obvious. And because the plastic changes color as the glossy surface is filed, it's possible to see, like when that darker line disappears, and that darker line disappears like it is right there with the flat file, that means that the ridge is now gone. This leaves little file marks, a rough surface, which will also show when you put glossy paint on it. So that's why I take the really fine grain 1600 grit emery cloth, and although it doesn't get rid of all of them, it gets rid of enough of them so that hopefully the file marks won't show too much. The seams are designed to go on the sides of the tubes when they're installed. You're supposed to look at it here and the seams aren't there, but you know, you would be able to see them. Nail across that and you can tell that it's gone now. There's these raised parts here. I want to make sure I don't file those away. That's part of the detail that exists in the design and the execution. What I was saying though is that because these are injection molded, and the reality was that, there we go, this one control panel, there wasn't enough plastic injected into the mold. It just wasn't when it was done. No, not enough plastic injected into the mold, and so right on the top, where there were control dials and buttons, and it was in a place in the model where it'd be very obvious. You'd be able to see it. It was basically a hollow. It was like a divot. Primary kit, the one that I'm using the most parts, from which I'm using the most parts, it was very bad. And then I went to the next one, and it was even worse. That is, even more plastic was missing, and I was beginning to despair and think that I would have to fill it in with this model plastic putty and somehow either give up on the detail or try to carve into it the little dials and buttons that were supposed to be there. But miracle of miracles, the third kit had one that was okay. It was actually a real surprise, and so with these missile tubes, I almost needed like a fourth kit because of just off the tops of these. For some reason, there's like a little plastic ridge around the top, and these slide up through that deck I was just working on with those holes. These slide through those, and the tops just bind, just like a little ridge around the top. So since I've got the file out, I'm going to take some time to file that down so that maybe they will go through those holes without jamming. As you can see, this is relaxing, I guess, but it's not painting. So I'll apologize for the people who, after break, are checking in on Submarine Wednesday. The relaxing painting is turned into relaxing filing. Doing this kind of thing, this is usually where I wander off into talking about 1960s cartoons, theme songs of television shows, and I don't know, just how cable destroyed all of the jobs in the TV antenna industry. Yeah, we don't talk about that. Probably losing as many jobs as we lost auto manufacturing jobs. That was something I talked about on Monday. File down, you can still see the seam in that it's, where the cement glue held them together, but can't feel it. So I'm hoping that once it's primed and painted, it will be invisible. I'm going to finish this by sanding it down with the 1600 grit emery cloth just to show. But what I'm likely to do now is do the filing on all of these, other than this one that I'm going to finish just to show how it's finished. Getting the top of it as well, just in the bottom. These have to be kind of flat in order to fit. Well, let's just say this. These are not going to fit. I know they are not going to fit into where they need to fit, even before they're painted, much less after. And so I'm going to need to be cleaning these up too on the very bottom, this little ridge. See, there's a ridge there that is supposed to be flush with the floor. And it won't be, because none of these parts in this model fit. Yeah, so usually at this point, when I'm doing this kind of thing, I should be talking about, something fairly really. There you can see how, even with a little bit of rubbing, it begins to, it polishes it and gets rid of the file marks. So this one, once I'm done with this, will be ready for priming. Even that is going to be a little bit of a challenge. It's like these need to be primed on all sides. So what I'm thinking of doing, I don't know if I'll do it on stream or not. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll do some carpentry. Not today, but maybe next week. So I was going to take a block of wood, like a little piece of 2x4, like a foot-long 2x4, and get some dowels that fit on the inside here. right? And get 15 of them, drill some holes in the 2x4, and put the dowels in, and then put these on the dowels, and then that will hold them all vertically so I can prime them and paint them like that. That's about the only way I can think of doing it. You can't hold them. I don't want to do them like this and then roll them over, because that'll just mess it up. I want it all pretty uniform. So that's my plan, is to build a 15 doweled stand onto which I can stand these and do them, get the priming done. And then they're supposed to be glossy yellow, and I want to spray paint that on. The yellow paints that I've got do not cover very well with the brush. They leave lots of brush marks. They need multiple coats, and it really would be a mess on these things to do it that way. So I just bought some gloss yellow spray paint, and rather than trying to do the airbrush with the existing yellow paint, I figured the gloss yellow spray paint is designed to cover pretty well, so that's what I'll be doing. I'll test it on parts of the model that, like the trees, the trees these things come on. I still got a bunch of those. I can test it on that, make sure it works. There, I don't know how well this shows on camera, but the seams are essentially gone. It's a little flat spotted, where I filed it. So this isn't perfectly round. There's a little kind of flat spotted. Sanded it, but it's going to be less obvious. It's just painted than the seams were. And after they're primed, I'll see much more clearly this was successful in terms of getting rid of the visible seams on the tubes. And then what's going to happen, you just know this is going to happen. Right, because that's what happens with the submarine, is that after I get these all carefully filed and sanded and smoothed, I'm going to try to get them to be painted, right? Slide them into that deck I showed you before. Try to get them up through the holes. It'll be too tight and the paint will rub off. So it'll be like nothing was ever done. It'll be all scratched up. So all the effort to make them look nice will be lost, because it'll just be scraped up paint. So I'm going to be, after I prime them, but before I paint them yellow, I'm going to do my best to test fit them into that deck to make sure that there's plenty of clearance. And that will probably require like cleaning out and enlarging the holes through which these supposedly will just simply slide. Right? Doing that so that they will slide in without scraping off the paint. Okay, this isn't, the ridge on this side is not too bad. There's still one there, you can still see. wasn't taking very much on this to down. Beams, and then top. Okay, as I showed you before on the other one, kind of beveling these edges because there's like a raised edge around the top, and the raised edge, when I test fit one or two of these, made it very difficult to get it into and through the openings in the deck. This little thing here, that's where it came off of the tree. Things are all connected to trees. They're called, or sprues. Anyway, it's the part of the injection molding process, and then you end up with, you have a choice when you take them off of breaking them off and then ending up with not protrusions but divots. Okay, protrusions, as you can see, can be filed or sanded off. Divots are much more difficult because they need to be filled in and then sanded so that the surface is restored to what it was supposed to have been. So when I remove them from the trees, if I can do that rather than having had them done already, which is with these old models, oftentimes they're crudely broken off, so that there are divots. There were a couple already, one in the hull, and had to be filled in. It's weird. On this side, they were very close to each other, but on this side they're not. So what's clear is that these two halves of this particular tube, and they're all individual. You know, you'd think that they'd all be kind of the same. Not the same diameter. Not by much, again, just fractions of a millimeter. But this side was bigger than this side. And so they were even on the other side, but on this side, this half, you can see the line there, was bigger and is a raised surface above the other half. Yeah, I don't know how much this shows on camera, but it becomes fairly easy to see when the seam is gone, not just physically, but visibly. Just both sides of the seam. Initially touches the side that's higher or raised up, and then eventually it comes down to I'm trying to take off as little as possible. And then again, I want to bevel the top because a raised lip on it that catches and keeps this from sliding nicely into the holes in the deck. A bit to make sure it's sort of flat. And the same thing with the bottom, because that too is not lined perfectly. Nope, I didn't do this bit. Doing this, you can see kind of the lighter line. That's the high side. You start at the high side and work down to the low side, and as the high side gets down to the same level as the low side, then I get the lighter color of I want to do it. I'm on the brim here, where this is designed to, but will not, I know it will not, fit nicely into the recess on it. Okay. And as I mentioned, I finished one. This one here, I polished that with the fine emery cloth. I'm going to just keep filing. Use one tool at a time. In this case, I'm just going to use the file. Get all of these filed down, and then pull out the emery cloth and polish them. Know until I prime them, really how successful I've been in getting rid of the visible seam. Weird. Doesn't show that much, but it's definitely there. Okay, there. 2 out of 15. I just keep doing this until more or less 2 o'clock, because it needs to be done. You can't use these missile tubes as they are. Well, I can. When I built this kit as a 7th or 8th grader, probably, use some sort of razor blade knife. I didn't have an X-Acto knife, but I had these one-sided razor blades. Probably did that to get these nubs off, the remnant of when they came off the tree, right? But I did not bother getting rid of the seams. I just painted them yellow, like the instructions say in the box top shows. And there they were. Very crudely painted yellow tubes. Didn't have acrylic paints then either. For enamels. Consistency was, they were harder to brush. They were really kind of viscous. They showed brush marks pretty badly. Anyway, so you can imagine what these looked like when I painted them. Didn't have a really fine brush, just, yellow paint, slap it on, it says yellow, so they're yellow. Stick them and glue it together. I remember the model ended up looking pretty cool, but I know that even though what I'm doing now is not like display quality, it's not, if you were to hire a professional modeler and they were to look at this, they'd say, well, this, for an unskilled amateur, this wasn't bad. That's the kind of praise this would get. And that's about what it deserves. But compared to what I did when I was like 11 or 12 or whatever, it looks a lot better. I had a lot of fun with, if you've been watching this for a while, the galley and the mess hall and that section of the submarine was taking forever because I went out of my way to paint some of the detail that was molded in. The galley has kitchen cabinets with handles and raised edges and pots and pans hanging on the back wall. So the instructions say paint it white, which means that you wouldn't see any of that detail because it would all just be whited out. So I took, forever on the stream, just like it took me an hour and a half to paint the lines on some pipes on that one floor. Yeah, so if you get the light right and the angle right, you can see the pots and pans hanging and the faucet on the sink, which is pretty cool. And then I outlined the raised edges. I did those with a red felt tip pen, so it looks like a 1950s kitchen, white with red piping or red detail on the edges, which is probably not at all how the galley was done, but it's kind of the time period. I thought it would be kind of fun. You can't really tell from the instructions where the painting directions are useless, or from the box top where the colors are inconsistent with the painting instructions, what this really was like, what the submarine really was colored. But basically I'm working off the box top, because at least everything has different colors on it, not just the gray of the plastic. Like the painting instructions, which have you paint maybe, 10% of the surface area, and the rest of it is just left gray. That's what I did when I put this together originally, is just, painted bits of it. Most of it was just left in this plastic color. At least it was all the same color gray, because I only had one kit to work from. 3. Yeah, for me, this is relaxing. I'm sure for you, it's just kind of boring and tedious and dull, and all of those other synonyms for not very interesting. But as far as the submarine model goes, it is necessary. If I wanted to continue to look better than it did in 1964 or 65. Should do is I should actually pull it out. It's over there. Show you the hull so you can see what's been done so far. So you can tell that having worked on this in a year full of Wednesdays, it feels like that it actually is turning into a submarine. So maybe I'll do that. Probably like in about a half hour, when there's like 15 minutes left, is I'll show to you the work that's been completed so far. So what is yet to be done. In the meantime, I'm just going to be doing this. You can start to see the plastic dust piling up. You can imagine how that just gets everywhere. Progress. I'm making progress. I don't know if you saw it, but I finished that deck. The one with all the pipes and stuff on it. I got the stuff cemented on. And I put some filler in on the bottom. It just needs to be sanded down, and then the bottom of that deck needs to be painted. I haven't gotten the warp out yet. But I'm filing missile tubes. Trying to get them maybe maybe successfully, maybe not, in condition to get into their decks. I've filed and sanded 1 and filed 2. There's only 12 more to go. But I am making progress. But again, just to prove that that's true, when it gets to be about like 1:45 and I start wrapping up for the day, my wrap-up will be to show everybody what's been accomplished so far. Not just in the missile launch compartment, which I'm working on here, but the entire submarine. I especially like showing off the galley. I think the galley came out really well. It's buried way in the back. It's hard to see. You have to get the angle right and the light right. But when you do see it, it's like, oh, that's pretty cool. That was really worth the 6 hours it took this unskilled person to paint and cement together. So there, it looks like there's a flaw in the. After priming, there may be another bout of sanding and filing. I'm not sure. See how it looks after priming, and whether the flaws are worth the trouble fixing or not. Sometimes it's not. It's just like these flaws will be covered up by other flaws. Seriously, these flaws are so minor compared to the flaws that will develop in the process of cementing this together and getting the parts to align. And that's another thing, is the parts don't fit. There's been some in the control room. There was a significant problem where the periscopes come down into tubes that are cemented into the deck, and they were unaligned by 1/8 of an inch. That doesn't sound like a lot, but if this model were blown up to real size, that 1/8 of an inch would be the better part of 3 feet. So when your periscopes come down from the sail into the control room where you're supposed to sit there and look through them, and you've got a pneumatic tube into which these things are supposed to fit, right? And you lower them down into the pneumatic tubes, except they come down 3 feet away from the pneumatic tubes. That's not good. Well, that was the kind of poor fit that this model presented. So I had to do some hopefully not terribly visible manipulation of the control room. Basically, essentially what happened is that the little plastic tubes, which represent the pneumatic tubes into which the periscopes and radio antenna stuff fit, there was kind of a raised area that held those up. I had to dig a channel into that, carved a channel into that so that they could all be positioned 1/8 of an inch away from where the model they were supposed to go. Yeah, that was the worst one in terms of things not fitting. I had thought about doing all sorts of more extensive things, like repositioning the entire deck 1/8 of an inch away, extending it on one side and cutting it down on the other, or rebuilding the bulkheads, and finally I just decided that this might work and it might not be too terribly visible, and it did. It worked, and it's not too terribly visible. I can say this feels like it's moving along, but it probably, I guess in some ways it just really isn't, is that it's taking, what have I got? This is the fourth one. Yeah, guess what I'll be doing next Wednesday? Because I don't work on this in between streams. Not very much anyway. I've done like one or two little things over the months, but pretty much all the work that's done on the submarine is done on Submarine Wednesday. Hydrate. Oop. Thank everybody who has become a follower today. And if you're watching this or listening to it or catching it on YouTube later, please consider becoming a follower. And on YouTube, I guess it's a sponsor. All of that helps Dice and Dungeons along. Viewers and followers and all of that we're really very thankful for everybody who does that. I have to make this pitch at least once every stream. If you really want to help Dice and Dungeons continue in its relaxing painting, or in this case, filing and sanding. And on Sundays, it's Dungeons and Dragons campaign. You can go to patreon.com/Dice and Dungeons, Dice and Dungeons, and become a patron. And patrons get perks, like you get access to the Dungeon Master's notes for the sessions that have been run, and also thank you for the hydration redemption. And also we get to watch our improv warm-up sessions, which we do before each actual session. They are frequently funny. Okay? I mean, they're just improv warm-up sessions. Sometimes they go really off the rails. Like, this is very silly and beyond funny to silly. But yeah, that's a cool thing. At higher levels, you get to be listed in the credits of the stream. That's cool. You could be like an executive producer, You get your name on there and everybody can see it, but you don't have to do anything other than just support the show with your Patreon support. A little bit. You can still see the seam because there's a seam there, but if the nail doesn't catch it, it probably won't show. So thank you, you who have become followers today. And anybody who's catching this, either on the stream or later on YouTube, seriously, check out the D&D campaign, the Dice and Dungeons D&D campaign. And if you don't do it on Sunday at 2 with the live chat, all of them from session 1 on, I think they're still available, but they are available as both the podcast and on YouTube. which makes it a convenient way. You can go to the podcast and listen to the campaign while you're commuting. When while you're stuck in traffic, you might as well be amused and entertained. And I can guarantee that if you listen to the podcast, you probably shouldn't be watching it on YouTube if you're driving. Okay? I'm not advising you to do that. Definitely not. But if you're catching it as a podcast, I guarantee that you will be entertained. I haven't really talked about anything terribly interesting today. I apologize for that. Thinking of anything terribly interesting today. On Monday I was talking about Green Acres and how they would have to, if you catch some of those episodes, you have to think about how could that show lead to spin-offs? I mean, if you were dealing with an incredible classic like Gilligan's Island, right? Had an all-star cast, and well, I guess that one did too. It was like Eddie Arnold and Eva Gabor. It had, some big-name people appeared on kind of weird TV shows back then. But there was, why not? There's money in it. There's money in TV. And their agent said, I know. Why would you want to do silly things on a desert island, except it wasn't a desert. An uncharted desert island. A desert would imply a lack of water, but there was plenty of water. There was even a whole freshwater lagoon on Gilligan's Island. So they lied. They misrepresented the island. It might have been uncharted, which makes no sense. Well, it was in the 60s, so that's possible, I guess. Until Landsat picked it up or something. But it was definitely not a desert island. I don't have to complain about that. That was a misrepresentation. Anyway, something like Gilligan's Island. Cool, right? How could that not have spin-offs, but Green Acres did? Go figure. Go watch a couple and then ask yourself, what about this could lead to spin-offs? And maybe it wasn't so much that it spun off. Another way to look at it is because some of the characters appeared in other shows, I think like Petticoat Junction and stuff. Maybe it wasn't so much a spin-off of that as it was the like a money-saving device. It made it easier for the writers and the producers and all to just use some of the same characters. Continues to move along at a very slow and probably uninspiring pace, for those of you who are watching this. Hold on just a second. You looking for the adhesive? Okay. This is a workshop, so there's other work going on, and it requires shopping in the workshop. A little something going on. It's been non-stop stuff for like a month and a half now here. Trying to get some renovations done You know, and with any renovation, there's always the big stuff and then the little stuff, and the little stuff, like filling in nail holes in the wall before you paint. You know, I mean, rolling paint can go pretty quickly. That's the big stuff, but it can sometimes take even longer than rolling the paint to just patch all the nail holes and then, if necessary, sand them before painting. Renovations are getting into the little stuff now. And it's like, when will this ever end? And the little stuff ends up taking as long as the big stuff. Sometimes it takes even longer. Like you don't have the part and it takes a week for it to show up. So a little stuff thing that might take, 20 minutes to do could end up taking more than a week. Not because the doing of it took a week, but the getting what you needed to do it took a week. Yeah, that's what it's been. That's what's happening here, is that it's getting into the really, I need 7 of these and you've got 6. How long will it take to get the 7th one? Well, it should come in probably, 10 days or less. 10 days. Yeah. So the real moral of the story is that if you're ever tempted to like do renovations and fix things up, make them look better, that kind of thing. Yeah. It's going to take longer than you think. There will be points of frustration, and somewhere like 80% of the job is done. You'll say, why did we even start this? But then it's done and you look at it and say, that's why, because it looks really good now. Good for us. If you're doing it yourself, it can get kind of frustrating while you're trying to find parts and you're waiting for paint to dry, that kind of thing before moving on, and it feels like it's taking a long time, because it is taking a long time. At least you have some control over it. So, but if you're waiting on other people, if there's something that requires a contractor, like, doing electrical work, it's probably, unless you're really good at it and you're absolutely certain that you know what you're doing, and even then, that's the kind of thing you might want to leave to a licensed electrician. And you call up the licensed electricians and they say, oh yeah, we could do that, but we're booked for the next 700 days. So if you don't mind waiting until 2025, we'll get right on it. That isn't what happened here, but that's the kind of stuff that, if you do it yourself, you just wait for when you can get around to it. Yeah, so everything we're doing is stuff that needed to be or should have been done, and it's just going to make the whole house, like the insulation will help with the heating bills, and there won't be squirrels in the attic anymore. Flying squirrels are really cute, but you really don't need them. You really don't need them in your attic. And, it's nice to let them use the attic. It's warm, and the insulation, it's a good nesting material and all of that, but it doesn't enhance, the living situation. Anyway, yeah. It's been going on a long time and will continue to go on for some time yet, because they're all little bits and pieces, all the little bits at the end that are being done that are taking quite a while. Six filed and one sanded. There you go. Filed and sanded. Nothing. So next Submarine Wednesday will be more of this. And Friday, got more or less 10 when the stream starts. I started on time today. I'm pretty sure that I hit the stream starting soon button well before 10 o'clock. I think it was like 9:50, 9:56 or 9:57. The stream started before the clock on the computer went to 10:01. So that was, pretty much on time. My break did not go overtime. I started painting within 15 minutes of the start. Oftentimes it's within a half hour. I took almost an hour and a half to paint three little lines on a deck. I could see this. What I was planning to do when I retired was to do a lot of model building because I thought I'd be bored and there wasn't going to be anything much to do. I was wrong about that. It's like there's more to do now than when I was working, and it's like, how did I ever get anything done? Well, I was working full time. I mean, I can hardly get anything done now that I'm not working full time at all. So I bought a lot of models because I used to build them as a kid. And I thought, well, why not? So I probably have like 20 or 25. Some of them are really neat models, like this cutaway submarine. Okay. Some of them are just kind of boring models, like it's, what am I doing? I'm ruining this. I'm sanding something that's supposed to be detailed here. Started meandering off, screwing up. Okay, so it's a World War II fighter. Everybody's got those, right? But it's a nice one. Some of them are hard to find. Like I like to build 1/48 scale. I should say I built like 2, right, out of the 25 or 30 models I have. But I like 1/48 scale. And there are some models that are really hard to find in that scale, like X-15. You'd wonder why. It's a pretty iconic aircraft. But most of them come in 1/72nd. That seems to be the most widely available for most things. But I finally found one. It's a very beautiful plane. The painting isn't all that stunning because it's just black, right? Right, that's one that if I ever finish this submarine and we're still doing the stream, I might do that one next, maybe. Maybe I was really ambitious when I bought this. I had no idea what I was thinking, really. It's a plank built that is all wood, one plank at a time, like wooden boats are actually built of the America, the first the first clipper that won the America's Cup. That's why they named it the America's Cup, not because America won it, but because I'm pretty sure this is true, but because the yacht that won it was named the America. Anyway, that was one of the first things I bought because it's just a beautiful model. I don't know if it would be beautiful after I built it or not. If I ever build it, it's one of those things that promises to take even longer than the submarine. It's hard to imagine, isn't it? Something could take longer than the submarine to build. You know, and I'm looking forward to finally finishing this, which will eventually happen. You know, intentionally or not, eventually it'll be done. The last couple of decks aren't going to be too terribly challenging. There's not a huge amount of detail in them. There's pretty much just three colors: the color of the floor, the color of the walls, and this beige color that I've been using for the machinery. So if I ever can get this missile deck actually done, the chances of finishing the rest of it sometime during your lifetime greatly improved. It's just this deck is really, you would look at it and go, this is straightforward. It's just a bunch of tubes, right? Glue the tubes together, stick them through the holes. Maybe you put some yellow paint on them like it says. What can hold you back there? But there's hardly any parts that need to be cemented into other parts. But those didn't fit. Anyway, yeah. Plenty of excuses, but eventually this will get done. Just like you can see, eventually I'll be done with this because I've done 6 of them. 7 now that are filed. And the sanding down doesn't take that long. But you can see that during next Wednesday, if I start with this, that they'll be finished. Okay, it's 1:45. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to just do one more. Why not? I'll be more than, if I do this one, I'll be more than half done with them. Because there are 15, which does not divide evenly by 2, I will either be less than half done or more than half done, depending on whether I do 7 or 8. So I am choosing the pathway of being more than half done. It just sounds and feels better, doesn't it? More than half done. This one is not holding together. Okay. I want to put more cement on it or not? Or not to. But because it's moving. Okay. That one is not going to be the more than half done one. I'm going to have to run I'm going to do that after the stream. Need to run a little bead of cement on the inside of that tube because it's coming apart. And as I'm filing it down, it just keeps changing. It keeps moving. Hopefully that's the only one with that problem. Done with this one, which will be more than halfway done. I am going to pull the model out stick around. Don't give up yet. I'm going to pull the model out and quickly show you the what the submarine looks like. That one hadn't been broken. Yeah, well, it's going to be 10-2 instead of 1/4-2, but I still have time to show it to you. This one is the closest yet of the 8 that I've done, 9 if you count the one that was broken, to having the two halves actually line up with each other and not having all sorts of stuff across the top. It's almost like it was put together by someone who knew what they were doing. Almost, but not quite. Right. So there. It's 7 here, plus the one that's completely done. This one needs re-cementing. There's little bits of plastic dust all over everything here, but I do want to show to you the submarine. Again, that's the part that's not done. This section here, this big section here, is where this whole missile tube thing goes. So once that is done, there's this weird thing here called the reactor room, and then there's machine shops. But this is the part that has been completed. Okay, so you can see the kind of detail that went into that. You can see, like there's all sorts of little gauges and things. There's ladders on the control panels. There's all sorts of little dials and buttons and stuff. They get it up there. So that's why this has been taking so long, is that I've taken the time to do that kind of detail. There's some bunks. There's the officer's thing there. Here's the galley. And if you look behind the coffee urn, you can see pots and pans hanging on the wall there, and the red lining. The red is just cabinets. That silver thing there in the background is the faucet on the cabinets. Right, there's a storeroom. You see the cabinets on the storeroom. All the tables and benches, and here's the escape hatch with a little ladder in it. So this is why it's been taking so long, because I have been spending way more time than I probably should have trying to paint the detail. Like on the hatch, there's a hatch between the decks. I painted the handle on that. Yeah, the fire extinguishers. There's some of that white. There's there. It looks like it's a flaw in the red paint, but it's actually just one of those pieces of dust, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, I just wanted to show that to you. Now here it is upside down, because that's how I'm holding it. But yeah, you can see how this all came together. Yep. Put this back so that I don't drop it and break it yet. thank you all for joining in to Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons. On Friday, I will be doing a minifig, probably this guy, some sort of demon, okay? And if I get really far on this, because I probably will, because there's not much complication here. It's just going to be greens and grays with a nasty looking face, teeth and things. If I complete that, I'll probably start working on a centaur, which will be a little bit more time consuming, but kind of fun to do. So D&D minifigs on Friday and next Monday. And then next Wednesday, I will continue working on these tubes. So I'm going to put them in here. These are the ones that have been filed. These are the ones that have not been filed. Hopefully I could tell the difference, but I'll keep them separate anyway. This one's been both filed and sanded, and I'm going to put it in the filed thing, and if I sand it again, who cares? But there are 8 there, 8 out of 15, more than halfway done. This one is, I need to run some cement. I'm just going to do it up on run a brush and just do it on the inside of the tube. It's just on the bottom part here. It's loose, and as I'm filing it, it just keeps moving around. I'll do that after I sign off. No, I won't. I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to do it right now, and if I'm really lucky, I won't, in the process, spill the cement or get it on the outside of the tube, like I'm just doing there. Very liquid. Basically, it's you put it in, and if there's a little bit of opening, as they say, through capillary action, go down in between them and hold tight. Don't want to do is get it on my fingers and then touch it, because then it'll melt a fingerprint. It literally melt a fingerprint, because this isn't a glue, it's not an adhesive, it's a solvent, and it dissolves the plastic and creates a plastic weld. So this goes into the not yet filed. Those are the 7 that haven't been done. Those are filed. I might as well put this in with them, because that's what I'll be using. And thank you again for joining Relaxing Painting, Filing and Sanding with Dice and Dungeons. I'll be back on Friday, and next week Monday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Next week too, starting about 10, finishing around 2, taking a break in between, and making progress on stuff. It's moving along slowly and carefully. And thanks again. See you Friday.